It was a crisp autumn evening in the small town of Ravenswood, nestled deep in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains. The leaves were ablaze with color, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of wood smoke and damp earth. It was the perfect setting for a romantic getaway, and that's exactly what newlyweds, Sarah and Mike, had in mind. The young couple had just tied the knot in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. They had spent the previous night in a cozy bed and breakfast, and now they were ready to embark on their dream honeymoon. They packed their bags, loaded up their car, and set off towards the mountains, eager to spend some quality time together. Their destination was a secluded cabin deep in the woods, surrounded by nothing but trees and the sound of a babbling brook. The cabin was owned by a friend of Mike's family, and it was the perfect place for a romantic retreat. The couple arrived at the cabin in the late afternoon, just as the sun was setting over the mountains. As they settled into the cabin, they noticed that something was off. The air inside was stale, and there was a strange smell that they couldn't quite place. They shrugged it off, thinking that it was just the cabin's way of welcoming them. They spent the evening cooking dinner, building a fire, and enjoying each other's company. As the night wore on, they began to hear strange noises outside. At first they thought it was just the wind or the trees creaking, but then they heard footsteps. They were light and cautious, as if someone was trying not to be seen. Sarah and Mike exchanged a nervous glance, but they didn't think much of it. They were in the middle of nowhere after all. The next morning they woke up to find that their car had been moved. It was now parked on the other side of the cabin, and the engine was still warm. They were confused and a little spooked, but they didn't think much of it. They spent the day exploring the woods, holding hands, and enjoying the scenery. As the sun began to set, they returned to the cabin, exhausted but happy. They built a fire, cooked dinner, and settled in for the night. But as they were drifting off to sleep, they heard the footsteps again. This time, they were louder and more deliberate. Sarah and Mike tried to ignore them, but they couldn't shake off the feeling that they were being watched. They tried to go to sleep, but they were too scared. They lay awake, listening to the footsteps, which seemed to be getting closer and closer. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a figure loomed in the doorway. It was a woman, tall and gaunt, with long silver hair and eyes that glowed like embers. She was dressed in a tattered wedding dress, and her presence seemed to fill the room. Sarah and Mike were paralyzed with fear. They couldn't move or speak. The woman began to walk towards them, her eyes fixed on them with an unnerving intensity. As she drew closer, they saw that her face was twisted into a grotesque grimace, and her skin was deathly pale. The couple tried to scream, but their voices were frozen in their throats. The woman reached out a bony hand and touched Sarah's face, and everything went black. The next morning, the police found the cabin empty, with no sign of Sarah and Mike. Their car was still parked outside, but there was no sign of the couple. The police searched the woods, but they found nothing. It was as if the couple had vanished into thin air. The cabin was left abandoned, and the legend of the ghostly bride spread throughout the town. People whispered about the strange occurrences and the unexplained disappearance of the honeymooners. Some said that the cabin was cursed, while others claimed that the ghostly bride was still roaming the woods, searching for her next victims. Years went by, and the legend of the ghostly bride only grew stronger. People avoided the cabin, and the woods were left to the mercy of the wind and the trees. But on certain nights, when the moon was full and the wind was blowing through the trees, people would swear that they saw a ghostly figure in a tattered wedding dress, wandering the woods, searching for something or someone. And if you ever find yourself in those woods on a dark and stormy night, be sure to keep an eye out for the ghostly bride. She might just be looking for you.